Welcome back to another episode of the Paycheck. I am your host, Justice. I used to be Pay. This is one of the podcasts of all time and another podcast that the internet definitely needed. Now, today I'm going to be talking about a few things, but first and foremost, I'm going to be talking about Kick, the streaming platform. Now, I actually have been kind of obsessed with this platform since it came out. I always thought it was a really interesting idea. It's something that's really been on my mind for the last, like 3 years or so now since it's existed. And I just feel like enough people don't talk about it anymore because the hype's gone. There was a lot of hype in the beginning and then it kind of cooled off, just like everything does on the internet. So it's not like a bad thing necessarily that Kick isn't super talked about anymore, but I just really want to discuss it. I feel like there's so much here that could be dug into, and I'm going to get into some of that in this video. I really should, or maybe could, make an entire hour-long video just on Kick and why I think it's so interesting. But regardless, I think that Kick as a platform had a ton of potential. I think that, as a platform right now, the way it exists currently, it's not terrible in the sense of how things turned out if you're looking at it from a Kick point of view, but from where it could have been, in my opinion, I think that this turned out a lot worse than what I expected. And yes, there's a cricket in the background. So if you hear a cricket, I'm sorry. I don't know how good my mic is at picking up stuff like that. But if you hear a cricket, just know I'm sorry. I'm recording this late at night. The streaming space really needed a competitor around the time that Kick came around. I mean, I think it still needs one now, but especially around 2022 when Kick was first thought of and created, because Twitch is a monopoly. I'm sorry. Twitch is a monopoly of the streaming service, or of the streaming options. It isn't as much now, but it definitely was a few years ago. If you're not streaming on Twitch, you might as well not stream at all. Of course, we have YouTube streaming, and then there was Mixer a few years ago, or maybe 10 years ago now at this point. Who knows how long it's been, but regardless, if you aren't streaming on Twitch, good luck. That genuinely good luck, because there's no growth anywhere else but Twitch. Twitch on its own is really hard to grow on as a platform because people kind of have to catch you live, or they catch clips and then try to catch you live, but there's no other platform where there's any sort of discoverability when it comes to streaming. YouTube has gotten a little bit better in terms of putting streams on people's For You pages or recommended pages, whatever you want to call it, but for the most part, you don't really get a ton of help from these other platforms when you're streaming. If you're streaming on TikTok, people are scrolling and, the monetization is not that good. It's an okay option. Facebook, anything else besides, YouTube is just kind of a joke in terms of being a mainstream space for streaming. All you really had was Twitch way up here, and then YouTube was an option if you were already a huge YouTuber and had a huge audience. If you're somebody like I Show Speed who kind of came up on YouTube, then yeah, you can stream on YouTube. But pretty much anyone else that isn't already a major YouTuber, you can't start from 10K followers or 10K, subscribers and stream on YouTube and expect to grow and be this massive streamer in a few months. It's possible. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's not likely. So when Kick came around, I think that it was amazing. It was an amazing opportunity to take as a competitor to Twitch because people were really tired of Twitch at the time. Obviously, they had banned gambling, which actually led to Kick, but just the way that Twitch operates sometimes, Twitch likes to play favorites a lot, especially with, the hot tub streamers, the girls. Twitch plays a lot of favorites when it, comes to dealing out punishment, when it comes to certain deals that they give creators. There's a lot of things that go on with Twitch that rightfully so a lot of people complain about. Twitch, for the most part, is a good platform, but in terms of the terms of service, certain creators get banned really easily. Some creators get a slap on the wrist. There's just so much there that caused a lot of disdain for the platform, really amongst creators first, but in return, fans, because they're fans of the creators that were having these issues. Obviously, Aiden Ross being the main one. But I think that where Kick truly messed up was their marketing, in my opinion. Because they were marketed as this crazy wild plays. Oh my God, go here and do anything. All the people that are banned on Twitch, come to Kick. We don't have any TOS. That was their whole marketing. But I think that they really messed up there. I think that they should have focused a lot more on the creator side of things, and not just the creator side of things, but just the average human side of things, in my opinion. I also believe that they should have been upfront about the whole stake gambling thing, right? Because the real reason that Kick was created was because Twitch banned gambling. A lot of creators were complaining about gambling, kids watching gambling, it's not a good thing. So that was the result of that was the creation of Kick with Trainwrecks, Aiden, the guys at stake. I think that should have been really an upfront kind of thing. Because even though they didn't like outwardly say that, we all kind of knew it. But in conclusion, it kind of felt like a shady type of thing where it's like, oh, Kick is backed by Stake. Oh, it's this kind of shady thing. Oh, it kind of felt like they were being underhanded in a way, even if that wasn't the intention. By not coming out and saying, yes, Kick is, funded by Stake, the gambling company. We're trying to get you to gamble. I feel like that came off a bit shisty, which was already kind of a rough start with a lot of people, because anytime you're trying to do something new, especially when there's something super established like Twitch, people are going to have a ton of questions. So when that's a thing that comes up but isn't really addressed head on, I feel like that led to a lot of people feeling like this was already shady. So I feel like they should have been a lot more upfront about that and just been like, yeah, this is a gambling, this is a not I don't know, not a gambling site, but this is a site where we gamble. This is funded by, the biggest online casino or whatever. Like, yeah, that's what we do here. That's part of the game. We're not saying you have to gamble to stream on Twitch, but we're not going to sit up here and act like this isn't advertisement for Stake. It's the truth. I think they should have been more upfront with that and led with that a little bit more and been selling to the audience like, yeah, this is a little bit more adult content, not adult content where, nudity and all that kind of crazy stuff, but the content on Kick is going to be a little bit edgier. It's going to be more adult themed. It's going to be, I think that they leaned a little too much into the anything can happen on Kick stuff. I think that was a really terrible selling point, because for as crazy as it is for like the average creator who, maybe they can make a racist joke here and there, maybe say a slur here and there and not get banned, attracted the worst people on the internet, the worst content creators on the internet, the people that will literally do anything for clout, or the people that just want to get on stream and just do completely just degenerate stuff. That's what it attracted. And it made it made Kick in its content a lot more comparable to Rumble than Twitch. And I don't think that was ever the goal. Rumble as a content space is really just a space for like outcasts. That's all it is. Kick wasn't supposed to be the outcast space. It was supposed to be the alternate. It was supposed to be hey, this company is doing it wrong, we're doing it right. But be damn near on the same level. This wasn't supposed to be oh, you got kicked out of Twitch, come to Kick. Because not only did it, again, bring in some of the worst people ever, which we'll get into later, but it also made Kick feel like not an alternative. It felt like a relegation. You know how like in soccer when a team's playing really, really bad and they get relegated to the league below? That's what Kick felt like. When it was like, oh my gosh, this dude's been banned on Twitch 15 times. Well, now he has to go to Kick. Rather than being like, hey, this is just an alternative for other streamers that you can choose. You don't even have to gamble. You don't have to do this crazy stuff. You can just go to Kick because it's better over there. And I think that they should have focused more on the advertising to like the average person. And I mean the average person as a content creator and as a viewer, because just, get rid of, let's just hypothetically, when we talk about Kick, let's remove gambling for a second, even though obviously you can't do that. Like that's part of the deal. But let's just remove gambling for a second, remove the reputation that Kick has now grown with all the crazy stuff that they do on their site. It's amazing for the average person, hypothetically, like just the features that they have, right? Because there's a little bit lax copyright over there. Obviously, copyright isn't good, but when, you're listening to music on stream and, your VOD gets taken down, that sucks. Nobody wants to do that. It makes people not want to listen to music or not want to stream certain videos, stream certain things going on in the world, right? A little bit lax copyright. That's pretty good for creators, and it's good for the watchers at home. For the watchers at home, for the viewers, there are no ads on Kick. And I know that, for the creator, that kind of disincentivizes, I don't even know if that's a word. It doesn't make the viewer want to get a subscription, because the main reason you get a subscription on Twitch is because there's so many ads. You want to just watch your favorite creator without the ads, so you pay the little $5, right? But for the viewer, that's incredible to be able to watch your favorite streamer with no ads. There's no mid-roll, there's no hour ad break, there's none of that. It's just you get to watch your favorite creator. That should have been a much, because obviously they just didn't have ads yet, and they still don't have ads, I believe, but like that should have been a selling point. Hey, we don't have ads yet. So if you want to see your favorite creator and watch their content, pressure them to stream on Kick. Oh, they just want money from you. They just want, obviously that's a little bit like arm twisting manipulation type of thing, but still, that could have been something they used. In terms of creators, 95 to 5 split on the subs because they're making all the money from gambling, but still, 95 to 5 split on subs. Obviously, they did talk about that, but I feel like there was much more focus on the things that Twitch was doing wrong in the sense of like, oh, banning people, doing this, doing that, when they should have more so focused on the things that they really got right, because they did have some things that they got right. Specifically, the split for content creators in terms of money, the lax TOS in terms of banning people, because as much as, it got out of control on Kick, there was a lot of stuff going on Twitch where people were being banned for stuff that just didn't make a lot of sense, or there just was favoritism. So the lax banning was good for creators. The lack of ads was good for the viewers. And the little bit more lax chat, again, there's levels to it, but it was good for the overall community. And so there were a lot of things about Kick in the beginning that were really beneficial. And it really could have marketed itself as a way to break free from this major corporation in Twitch and Amazon and be a little bit more grounded with the people. And of course, I haven't even gotten to the point that they were actually paying creators, like literally giving them contracts and exclusive deals. Now, obviously, they were only doing this to get some of the big creators to come to their platform, because outside of Aiden Ross, who was really going to go to Kick and try this new platform if there wasn't a money incentive? So they had to do that in the beginning. But obviously, like, that's a good thing, right? Content creators getting paid is a good thing because Twitch isn't paying them like that. Twitch wasn't giving out exclusive deals. On Twitch, you're lucky if you have a 60-40 split on your subs. You're lucky if you get that. So them having exclusive contracts and paying these creators was obviously a great thing as well. Taking care of these guys, getting them the money that they, I don't know if I'm going to say that they deserve, but just getting them the money that they, I guess, were worth, according to Kick, is a great thing. But outside of even just paying the creators directly, the fact that Kick was going to exist as a legitimate alternate was huge. Because if, there's a streaming service that pops up with a company like Stake behind it with basically endless pockets, they can compete. Rumble can't compete. They don't got the pockets that Stake has, at least not being poured into the platform. Any other platform doesn't have the pockets that Stake has to pour into Kick. But Kick has unlimited funding behind it. So when they start pulling these creators over, it puts pressure on Twitch. Twitch now has to actually give a little way in the negotiations. And so even if the content creator isn't going to Twitch, even if somebody like Kai Cenat, I'm sure at the peak of his powers when Kick was throwing him a bag, like, please, Kai, we got 20 million, we got 30 million, however much money they were offering to Kai Cenat, I guarantee you that made Twitch go, all right, well, we gotta give Kai something. I don't know what they gave Kai. We don't know if Kai Cenat has a contract or not. I don't know. But I guarantee you that Kick existing and having some money to offer him and existing as a possible alternate gave Kai a lot more leverage in negotiations with Twitch. And it would do that for a majority of these creators. Obviously Twitch is going to be in direct contact with guys like Kai Cenat, Hassanabi, Plaque Max. These guys at the very, very top of Jinxie, these guys at the very top of the streaming categories, but the guys who are a little bit lower and, maybe they're not the top dogs, but they are, they got some decent motion on there. Kick existing as a viable option gives them leverage. It gives them a lot of leverage. Somebody like DDG who, like, he's been a hot streamer recently, but like if Kick was on its stuff like it could have been, him being like, hey, y'all, I'm going to just go to Kick in the middle of whatever conversation he's having about bans, about, subscriber split, that would be huge if Kick was truly a viable option. And I'm going to tell you the reason that Kick isn't a viable option. Or it is, but it's not as valuable as it could have been to most creators, because I still want to believe in Kick, but like, it's cooked, bro. And that's just the content creators that came over there. The reputation that Kick has right now is in the dumps. Because for one, people went over there, they were immediately just being absurdly racist on the site. But to take it even further than that, they were doing ridiculous stuff. They were fighting on there, stealing on there, harassing people, having sex on there. There's P3DOs, getting kids to show their bodies and selling it in discourse. So there was a lot of garbage happening on Kick. Garbage. And that ruined the reputation. So now I guarantee you, if somebody comes into negotiations with Twitch and they're like, okay, well then I'll just go to Kick then. Like, I'm thinking about going to Kick. I'm thinking about streaming on Kick. I guarantee you Twitch is like, okay, go to Kick. Go stream over there with the P3DOs and the abusers and all. That's what the reputation is now, because as soon as somebody hears, oh, you're streaming on Kick, why? The first question isn't, oh, what's your username? Oh, okay, that's cool. The first question is, why? Why would you stream there? Do you know what they do? Have you seen the clips? Have you seen this? Have you seen that? What about Aiden? What about Neon? What about Jack Doherty? What about there's a reputation that now exists with Kick, and it really all started with having Aiden Ross as their main marketer. Now, at the time, this was a great idea. Aiden Ross, disgruntled with Twitch, was growing tired of the bans, was growing tired of the TOS. He's ready to leave. He's ready to be the face of Kick, one of the biggest streamers in the history of streaming, one of the faces of the internet, really, in the modern era. Him being the guy to lead your movement isn't a bad idea. I just think that they gave him too much leeway. Like, they let him do and say things that were damaging Kick and poisoning the well before it even really could get off the ground. Because when Aiden was talking about Kick, right, and he's talking about no TOS, I can watch movies, I can watch this, we can do prank calls, we can do this, we can even watch adult content together. When he kind of set the layout for Kick as this site of no rules, of wild west, come over here, do whatever you want, say whatever you want, we doing everything, when he kind of laid that groundwork, and then his first couple streams, or his first streams, he literally does go onto an adult content site, or he's paying kids to break stuff in their house and do all this. He kind of, I'm not going to say it's all Aiden's fault, because that's not the case, but he opened the door for a lot of the stuff that we eventually saw. It was a slippery slope, because when Aiden Ross goes on Cornhub, there's a guy out there who's like, I'm going to get me a viral clip. I'm going to go even crazier than Aiden. I'm going to get some neck on stream. I'm going to have girls get naked on stream. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it kind of led into that. It wasn't Aiden directly telling these people to do these crazy things. I'm not blaming Aiden for that, but I'm saying that he opened the door, and then somebody took it a step further, and a step further, and somebody took it a step further. And then we get to the point where there's that one guy who, I forgot his name, but he got exposed for literally having kids on his monkey streams or whatever, and then taking their, undressed pictures and selling it in Discord. Like, it's a step in it's not Aiden Ross straight to that, but it's a line. It gets there eventually. And so, more than anything, Kick fumbled the bag with their reputation. That lack of TOS moderation being one of their leading points in terms of just do what you want, cooked them. It cooked them. And I think that, obviously in the beginning of any site, especially a site like Kick, when they're really trying to put things together, because Kick just kind of popped out of nowhere. It wasn't like this long process of like multiple years, 5 years. Oh, Kick is coming. A new streaming service is coming. It was just kind of like, hey, y'all, we going to do Kick. And then boom, it's here. So I don't know how long the development was. Maybe it was years and years, but that's just not what it felt like. But there's going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be bumps in the road, specifically with moderation, because the team's not that big. They don't know how to manage their site. There's going to be things slipping through the crack in the first 6 to 7 months. Think of like the crazy stuff you saw on YouTube back in the day, if you're old enough, or even Twitch back in the day. Like, things just slip through the cracks when you're a very new platform. So naturally, there were going to be things happening on Kick that were like, what the hell is this? We need to take this down. But when you open that gate of no TOS, there's not going to be a thing slipping through the crack here and there. It's just going to be a whole bunch of stuff, a whole bunch of filth and poop and trash rolling in, and you can't stop it all because you just made your moderation team. You might not even have that many employees doing this. You got a moderation team who's trying to figure out what they can and can't ban. And also there's no TOS. So what do they ban? Can I say that's too far and this isn't? Where do I draw the line? So not only were they trying to get through the bumps in the road of starting a new platform, trying to market themselves, bleeding money into this thing, but they're also trying to not monetize it, moderate it. And everyone on there is trying to do the most outlandish thing possible to get viewers, whether it's drugs, sex, like anything. They're doing anything. So when you have 200, not even TOS violations, 200 things that you just can't allow on your platform, like it just you'll get shut down. It's just too much per day, and you're still trying to figure out your own TOS. You're cooked. You're cooked. Honestly, I will say, I think Kick now is, it's building itself up. It's gaining a reputation of back to normal from the reputation that it had a year or 2 years ago. But there still is that vibe of like, oh, you're going to stream over there. That's the site with the P3DOs, the insane people, the abusers, all the weirdos, like that, the offenders, like that is still the reputation of the site to an extent. And so in this competition of Kick and Twitch, Kick nerfed themselves, majorly nerfed themselves. I think if they would have came out and said, hey, this is a platform for us on the internet, the people who are tired of being hampered down by Twitch and its, oppressive stuff and their monopoly, this is for us. We're going to reward the creators. We're going to reward you guys. So they could have, even though they weren't getting ads just because, they weren't established as a business, they could have advertised it as that. They could have been like, first 6 months, first year on Kick, no ads. Everybody gets to watch for free. Whoa, no ads on the stream. Oh my gosh, oh man. We're also going to be giving creators contracts. That was already a big deal, but still, oh man, we're giving creators, okay, the split. Okay, yeah, great. Okay, it's going to be a little bit more relaxed. We're backed by stake. Oh, I don't really know. I don't like the sound of that. Yeah, we're backed by stake. Don't get me wrong. Like, we want people to gamble, but that means we have a lot of resources. That means we have a lot of money to give away. That means we'll be doing this. We'll be, we're not worried about trying to cut costs, make a profit, and only promote the biggest streamers like a Kai Cenat like they do on Twitch. We're here for you guys. We're here for the people. So come over here. Don't watch any ads. You can still subscribe, but now when you subscribe, you're giving the creator the money. You're not paying Amazon. I feel like if they would have came at it with a little bit more open and honest approach about the gambling stuff and a little bit more focused on the community aspects rather than just no TOS, no TOS, no TOS, I think that they would be a much more viable player today. Now, I think that Twitch is very, very lucky that Kick had those first few years of shooting themselves in the foot, because that was the best thing that could have happened to them, because Kick was coming out and it was pretty hot. You got guys like XQC, you got Aiden, you got Bruce, you got Your Rage, you got all these guys going over there. And, obviously Twitch is still going to be Twitch at the end of the day. They're never not going to be number one. But it looked like Kick was going to be a very real number two. Like, man, if you're not streaming on Kick, you kind of tripping. You might need to multi-stream. I'm not saying you have to be primarily Kick, but you should multi-stream. And now, Kick is doing well for itself, but it still has that stigma. And so it takes away a lot of that power that it could have given the creators as well, something that I mentioned earlier, that negotiation power, because Kick's a real thing. I literally, it's funny, obviously that's a basic negotiation thing, but I literally got that from Craig Jones. If you know who that is, he's a jiu-jitsu guy. But he was talking about how, there's a traditional jiu-jitsu tournament, and then he made his own. And of course, he wants to pay fighters, what they're worth and all this stuff, all this fighter empowerment. But more than anything, the biggest thing that he did by creating his own massive tournament was give fighters an alternative and give them more leverage in negotiations. And that's where Kick, it's still a thing, but it's nowhere near as effective as it once was. Or not as it once was, or as it had the potential to be. Because imagine if whatever deal, iShowSpeed was on with YouTube, it came up, and then, now he's streaming on Twitch as well. But like, imagine if Kick was a real player too. And there's 3 people fighting for iShowSpeed right when the World Cup is about to come up. You know how much more money he probably could have got? You know what I mean? I don't know, but he probably would have got even more than whatever he got in reality. But yeah, I'm just really interested in Kick, and I'm really getting into like, as much as I hate the system, getting into what these creators are making. I think it's so interesting, so interesting to hear about these contracts and these deals, and obviously a lot of the Kick contracts that were like rumored were way gassed up, and that was advertising for Kick. I don't think these streamers were all getting $80 million deals. XQC might have got that 100M, so I ain't gonna lie, he might have got that, but. Yeah, I think I'm just getting more interested in like the business side of things, who's making what they're paying out. I just think that's all really interesting. Um, but speaking of gambling, I'm going to transition to my next topic. Gambling's everywhere. Gambling is it's unavoidable now, and it's so crazy to me because gambling used to be so taboo. Like talking about gambling and speaking about somebody with like a gambling addiction when I was growing up as a kid, that was like speaking about somebody who had like a crack addiction, like somebody that like, oh man, he's a gambler, well, yeah, hopefully he gets better. Like they used to talk about gambling and gambling addictions like it was the worst thing of all time. Now it's still obviously a bad thing, but I'm just saying it used to be so taboo and it's just so normalized now. Now, I'm gonna give you my take on gambling first. Obviously, I don't think everyone should be gambling. Like I don't think that's a good thing necessarily for society. I mean, I don't know, but I think that gambling's fun. To me personally, gambling's fun. I like sports betting. Sports betting's fun. I like playing, some hands of blackjack. To me, it's not super addicting because I just can't be addicted to losing money. I'm sorry. Like I'll do it every now and then, and maybe that is an addiction. I don't know. But if I like, if I'm watching a sporting event, I feel like putting, $10, $15 makes it more entertaining for me because obviously now I have some real stakes in it. So I'm not the guy that's, going to the casino every night. I'm not putting down hundreds of dollars on UFC cards or $200 on this football game. I might put, a little 20 ball down on this, a little 10, every weekend, every other weekend, something like that, just as like a pastime. But I think it's fun. And I think that it's a very real vice. Maybe that does sound like I'm a gambling addict. I don't know. I don't think that is though. If I'm spending like $25, maybe a weekend, maybe if there's something good on, but like, I think that it's a vice that's very real and it does need to be talked about. It does need to be addressed and it shouldn't be like thought of as like this really cool thing. But I think it's a vice in the same way that I think alcohol is a vice. I just don't understand like how alcohol as a product and as a substance has become so normalized when the effects of it are just as bad as really anything else. It really is. Like it might not be as direct as certain other things. Like it might not be as imminent. Like with gambling, like if I have a really bad gambling addiction, I can destroy my life this weekend very easily. I can go out there and put down $20,000 and be fucked up. Like bad, quickly. So I think that gambling just has that more immediate impact. Now, of course, you could drink and drive and kill someone and then go to jail. Like there's things that can happen to you when you're drunk. But for most people, like just, being an aggressive drinker, it's a buildup. It's an overtime type of thing that, you might not feel it when you're 25, but by the time you're 55, your life is in peril and you might be on the way to an early grave. So I think that the reason that alcohol isn't seen as, or isn't as demonized as some other vices is just because it doesn't always have that immediate impact. But regardless, I think that sports betting has gotten so out of hand, bro. You cannot enjoy any sports content without getting a sports betting ad. And again, this is coming from somebody who does sports bet. I do it. So it's not like I'm saying, oh my God, I hate gambling. Like, I understand that it can be fun. I get it. It can be fun. But it's actually out of hand. You cannot watch a sporting event without seeing some sort of gambling ad. You can't watch a sporting event halftime show, a sporting event, intro show, the lead up show, the countdown. You can't watch anything sports related without getting ads for gambling. Nothing. You can't watch your favorite content creator because this podcast is sponsored by DraftKings. Blah, 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 blah. You can't do anything. There's nothing sports related that you can absorb as content nowadays that isn't going to be promoted by gambling. It's just insane. Excuse me. And it's really gotten ridiculous in my opinion because at this point, I have no choice but to start to question the integrity of some of these leagues. I don't have a choice. Because if I'm watching the NBA, I love basketball. If I'm watching the NBA and I know that the line is 5.5 and I get to the end of the game and the Lakers are down 90 to 97 to, let's just say, the Kings, and they have the ball with 10 seconds left and the guy's still trying to shoot it, or they're trying to shoot a three, what do you think I'm going to think? Like, I have no choice but to start to question the integrity of the game because it's so intertwined with the game now. You got halftime guys where they not even halftime guys, when they kind of just, have a little reporter talk. And instead of having the reporter say, oh, man, we're looking at Chris Paul's ankle tonight. It looks a little swollen. I don't know if he's going to come back, or, having somebody come in. And then LeBron on this offseason, he's been working on his over the left shoulder fadeaway. He's been working on that a lot. He told me, man, this is a shot that he's been trying to get into his game. Now when they tag somebody in, it's, hey, what do you think is going to be the over for tonight? What do you think? Is Chris Paul going to hit his over of, 10 points? Ah, man, I don't know, man. It's looking good. He's hit 10 over the last 5 games. These are the broadcasters, the NBA broadcasters. This isn't Barstool Sports. This isn't even Bleacher Report. This is during the game. Hey, man, so who do you think is going to score more tonight? Mikal Bridges or like, and it's got the lines up. I'm like, I understand that it's a very powerful money-making thing, and I'm not saying that it should be banned necessarily, but I think it really does get to a point. Like, it really does get to a point where now I'm going to be questioning the integrity of the game. Because why is Charles Barkley telling me what the spread is when he's breaking down the game? What? And then not only that, now we're getting players getting caught gambling or, cheating, and, maybe they're hitting their lines on purpose, all that stuff. And I just don't understand how you don't expect that to happen. Like, it's like, duh, of course that's going to happen. Of course, there's going to be a guy who out there, maybe he isn't spending his NBA money right. He's buying too much stuff. He's going a little broke. So, yeah, he's going to tell his homeboy to put $50,000 on his unders, and he's going to fake an injury and go out the game, and they're going to split it. They're going to split the profits. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. People were roasting Michael Porter Jr. for saying, I can get my homeboys $10,000 if, I tell them to bet my unders and I act like I got an eye injury or something. But that's a very realistic thing for him to say. And it's kind of like, the class idiot speaking a little too much, saying a little too much. But like, I think that's a thing that is happening more often than we think. Some people are slicker about it than others because some people are getting caught. But like, I don't know how you expect me as a fan. Like, I feel like that's insulting my intelligence. For me to, as a fan, to think that this game is going to be 100% legit in all aspects, nobody's going to be doing anything kind of funky, when you're showing me all the different bets throughout the entire contest. Like, I was watching UFC this weekend. I think it was when Tim Elliott, when he submitted Kaya Sakura in the second round. And they're like, oh, man, Tim Elliott with the second round sub. If you guys would have, bet on that, you would have won $2,000 if you put down like 200 or something like that. And it's like, what is it? Like, what? And I get that that's like, oh, it was an unlikely thing. This is how much money you would have won. But like, what? It just feels a little awkward when the sport and the gambling is this intertwined. It just makes me... Now, obviously, I'm not saying that Tim Elliott, that whole thing was rigged or anything like that, but I'm just saying, like, I feel like the integrity of the games is a little bit in question to me now. Not necessarily saying the whole league is cheating, but imagine this. Imagine you were going to a college graduation, right? And you're there and you're, clapping it up for all the people, and the graduation is presented by ChatGPT. And the ad for the ChatGPT presented graduation is an ad of somebody in class, and they get asked a question and they go, oh, I don't know the answer. And so they ask ChatGPT. Now you're sitting there at this graduation presented by ChatGPT and you see that ad. What are you going to think? You're going to think, oh, these people got their degrees legitimately? Or are you going to think, man, I wonder how many of these guys are on ChatGPT? Oh, man, I wonder how many of these engineering degrees were ChatGPT. It's not necessarily saying that all of it was, or, but it's a thought that's going to naturally come into your mind. It's just naturally going to seep in there because you're seeing two things that should be kind of antithetical. You see, this game is being played purely for sport, for contest, who's the better team, and then you're also seeing, hey, but if you play this way, if this plays out, here's how much money you could win. And those guys also know. It's not like we know the lines. We know, that LeBron's over is 25 points, and he doesn't know. He knows just like I know. They know just like I know. The guy at the end of the bench who might get an opportunity tonight, he knows just like I know. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's also crazy how like family-friendly sports betting ads are. Like you can catch a sports betting ad anywhere. At any game, any event, like it does not matter. Like with alcohol, you can kind of say the same thing, but there's a little bit more restrictions on it. Like you're not going to see somebody taking a whole bunch of shots in a commercial. You're not going to see somebody down and chugging a beer in a commercial, and maybe it might not be one of the foremost commercials during a sporting event. It might not be the thing that's, presenting it or whatever, but like there's a little bit of restrictions there. You can catch a sports betting at anywhere, at family-friendly events, all that stuff. And so like I see clips of like Lil Baby's son talking about he was gambling and, he would have had more money if Anthony Edwards played right, if, he was talking about sports betting. And he's like 10. Now, obviously, Lil Baby's son is not the average 10-year-old. He's not, most 10-year-olds don't have the access to, the money that Lil Baby's son probably does. But I think that is a very real thing. Like, we're introducing these kids to gambling super young. Because even though there is a legal age for sports betting, just like there is alcohol, there isn't like a societal structure for this yet. It's still a very new thing being legal. So it's not like a thing where everyone universally knows, 21, you got to be 21. Even the kids know, okay, when I turn 21, I got to wait till I'm 21. Even though obviously kids are drinking in high school and even middle school, like obviously that doesn't stop people concretely, but there's still that like societal narrative, and it doesn't quite exist yet for sports betting. So for some of these, negligent parents, which is a lot of them, obviously you're going to say, oh, well, you shouldn't let your kids sports bet. But when they're getting sports betting ads, every NBA game, every YouTube video they watch, every commercial, they're going to want a sports bet. They're going to want to hear about it. If I'm 12 years old and you tell me, hey, if you predict the next game, you get a $5 bet, it turns into $200 plus whatever you won from, like, I'm going to be excited about that. Especially if I'm a big sports fan, which I was at 12. I was a sports nerd. I knew everything about sports. So, yeah, I'm going to think to myself, I got to find a way to sports bet. I'm going to find one of these offshore, gambling sites and say I'm 20, 22, whatever. Like there isn't a culture surrounding how we handle sports betting yet, while at the same time it's everywhere. So it's just kind of running rampant right now. And there's no real way to stop it yet. There's no real way to reel it in because it just makes so much money. It just makes so much money that ESPN themselves, as a sports network, made their own betting, whatever you want to call it, their own sports book. They made their own sports book. ESPN, the number one brand for sports in America. Whenever anyone talks about sports, or the first thing they think of, ESPN, that's the first thing anyone thinks of. Now they have their own sports book and they're pushing it on us. Now again, I don't mind putting a few dollars down on a bet myself. It's entertaining, it's fun, it's exciting. But I feel like it's just a bit much. There's too much intertwining of real sports, real stuff, and betting. Especially with now these stories coming out of these players. I'm sorry. But that's just my take on sports betting. I think it's getting a bit ridiculous. But we can move on to something else. Really quickly, I'm going to talk about some music stuff. I know I haven't talked about music on here, which probably is like blowing your mind if you're a constant viewer of my stuff. But right now in rap, it feels like everyone's trying to kind of find what sound is next up. Because for the last like 10 years or so, it's been that ATL trap sound that's been dominating, just absolutely dominating the airwaves, right? We all know Future, Lil Baby, Young Thug, that kind of sound has been dominating. And that's a regional sound, but it's not as regional as it could be. It's kind of become a worldwide thing. But right now it feels like that's dying off, but people don't know what's next. Drake was kind of adapting to that sound. Obviously, that's not his natural sound, but like he adapted to it. Kendrick even adapted to it at a point. Like everyone, J. Cole, everyone was kind of doing that ATL trap stuff, But now it feels like we don't really know what to do. Everyone's kind of free to do their own thing. Tyler just dropped a dance album. Kendrick Lamar just dropped GNX. That's a very regional West Coast sounding album. Metro Boomin dropped Futuristic Summer, which is even though it is an Atlanta sound, it's still very much regional, and it's a time capsule of an album. It sounds like something from the late 2000s, early 2010s. So right now it feels like everyone's kind of scrambling, trying to find what's next. And I think that's very interesting because I truly don't know what's next. I don't know what sound is going to be, kind of the takeover sound of this next era, because I'm sure there will be one. Obviously, everyone's different. Everyone makes music in a different way, but for the most part, there are trends for a reason. There are fashion trends for a reason. There are social media trends for a reason. There's stuff that people see that they think is cool and they want to replicate and do it in their own way. And that always happens with music. So I'm sure that something's coming. But right now, it feels like everyone's just kind of sticking to their own. And I think that's pretty cool because for the last, again, like 10, 15 years, it feels like, regional sound still existed. But once you got to a certain level of popularity, you kind of got poured into a melting pot, and maybe you didn't all the way conform, but you kind of conformed and, bent the knee for that ATL trap wave. You didn't necessarily have to make that exact type of music, but you started to sound a little bit more like them. Look at somebody like Lil Durk. When Lil Durk finally had his comeback, he went to Atlanta, literally, and he started to sound a little bit more like those guys. And his career, boom, out of there. So I'm not saying that that's the only reason, but my point being, in the last, 8 years or so, you kind of had to assimilate to that Atlanta sound, that specific trap sound, in order to be one of the top dogs. And right now, that's not the case. So I don't know what's coming next, but I do want to talk about that Metro Boomin album. And I just have to say, I can't believe people genuinely don't like this album. I absolutely love this Metro album. I think it's amazing. Like, it's not like a 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10, maybe not even an 8 out of 10 album, but it's so much fun. Like, it feels like a breath of fresh air, especially from Metro, because Metro is one of the greatest producers of all time. I don't care what anyone says. Excuse me. Sorry, I apologize. He's one of the greatest producers of all time. But I felt like he was getting a little stuck in the mud, a little, not repetitive, but like he was sticking in a bubble. And I think that's due to the artists that he was constantly working with, Future, Young Thug, Lil Baby, when he was working with Drake, from time to time. I feel like those type of artists weren't giving him the chance to really spread his wings. Not to say that he shouldn't work with them ever again, but like he didn't get to really expand upon his own stuff. I feel like this, obviously it's his own album, literally, but I feel like this is Metro's like music more than anything, because whenever he had an album, one of those Metro albums where, Gunna's on it and all the rest of those guys, like, yeah, it was a Metro album, but it didn't feel like, I mean, it did. It was a Metro album, but it wasn't a Metro album. You know how black people say stuff twice to really emphasize. It was a Metro album, but it wasn't a Metro album. And I feel like that's what this is. It feels like this is the first time in a very long time where he gets to be extremely creative and have a lot of fun. Like, I feel the fun and the joy in these songs. You might not like them yourself personally, but you can definitely hear them and feel like, okay, Metro, he had a blast making this stuff. This isn't something that, this isn't work anymore. I feel like some of these newer albums, they felt like work. This was him just genuinely, getting into his passion and just doing his thing. And I absolutely love that. And this album really is a time capsule of Atlanta from the late 2000s and early 2010s. And Metro was on Twitter, kind of crashing out about this album because, the numbers weren't too hot and people were kind of, crapping on this album online and saying, oh, Drake was right, all that stuff, right? And he was saying things like, oh, if you ever went to, Abercrombie and Aeropostale and all these stores, then you wouldn't get it. If you weren't getting girls, if you weren't getting twerked on in the high school parties, you wouldn't get it. If you didn't have to ask a girl for her number and write it down, you wouldn't get it. And while he was like coping massively by saying all these things and being disingenuous, I do understand the overall point. I think his overall point is correct, because if you listen to this album, it's from a very specific moment in time. Like, this was an era in music, but it was an era that didn't last more than like 5 years. The stuff that he's making on this album, that swag kind of, this pose, all that stuff, the snapbacks. Like, this era didn't last super long. So it's very possible that you missed it, and not necessarily because you were too young or maybe you were too old, but you just weren't listening to this type of stuff. So it was very possible that that came and went without you really interacting with it super heavily and having that something be that you enjoyed. So when he says that, all that goofy stuff about like, oh, if you weren't getting twerked on, if you weren't outside, all that stuff is ridiculous, yes, but I think the point of like, if you weren't here for this type of music and you weren't enjoying it, then this album might not be for you. I think that's very fair. And it's not just cope because people don't like it. I think it's very real because this is an album that's very specific. It's a very specific time period, and it doesn't really sound like anything else. Like, you're not going to hear modern music, in the last 5 years sound like this. So when he says, if you're not from this era, if you weren't outside, then you won't get it. Yeah, he's right. So maybe there are some people who like weren't around for this type of music when it first came out, and they're listening to Metro's album for the first time, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Let me go back and listen to these artists. Let me go back, and listen to somebody like Travis Porter, like Young Dro, like all, Roscoe Dash, these guys on this album. I think that that's possible. It's just not the most likely thing. But I do like as well how, he kind of mixed and matched some of the older Atlanta artists with some of the newer ones, even though Quavo's been around for years now, but like some of the more modern ones like Quavo, Lil Baby that are on here, mixing with some of the legends from that era, Waka Flocka being on this album, regardless of, anything that Waka Flocka says. It was nice to hear him on this project, and like, it gave me flashbacks. It gave me a little bit of nostalgia for that era. Now, obviously, I was a little too young to be going to parties and getting twerked on when this type of music was popping, but I was around and I was listening to it and I was enjoying it. So this album really, for as much as it is a throwback, it really does feel like, again, a breath of fresh air, especially from somebody like Metro, who has been in this ATL trap, hypnosis since 2015. So yeah, I really enjoy this album, and I really don't like the fact that it was, I don't like the fact that it was a kind of overlooked and a little bit underrated because people just didn't want to talk about it because it wasn't selling much. They saw the numbers for it and they went, oh my God, Metro, shut your horse up and play some drums. Oh my God, Drake was right. When you're not dissing the boy, look at you. That was the narrative. And I just don't think people gave this album a fair chance. And I feel like if they did, they would like it a lot more. And I'm going to wrap it up with this last thing. I'm going to make it quick, because I probably will give a further breakdown on this album later on down the line. But Chance the Rapper just released his newest album, Starline. And man, I'm so happy. I'm so happy because I really do enjoy this album so far. And I just, certain people just don't get it with this because Chance the Rapper was my guy. Like in 2016, Chance the Rapper was my favorite rapper. There was nobody that you could tell me about. It wasn't Drake. It wasn't, who else? It wasn't Kendrick. It wasn't Future. It wasn't anybody at that time. It was Chance the Rapper. It wasn't Kanye. It wasn't even Jay-Z. It was Future. Why did I just say Future? What the hell? It was Chance the Rapper I meant. Chance the Rapper was my guy. When Coloring Book came out, stop. Sorry, my dog he's being a little funky. When Coloring Book came out, there was nothing you could tell me about Chance the Rapper. He was the GOAT. He was the best rapper of that era. I thought he was going to be as big as Drake. Coloring Book was a banger. Like, I love Chance the Rapper. And obviously Acid Rap and even Prom Night, or 10 Day, I think it's called 10 Day. I forgot the name of the mixtape, but regardless, the one with Prom Night on it. Man, I was like, this guy, he's it. This is the guy. This is the guy for the next 10 years in music. And, we get to A Big Day, and that album is obviously extremely disappointing. And it was just never the same after that. He just kind of disappeared. The album was so bad. I miss my wife, or I love my wife, all that stuff, like the memes, hot shower. Like, it was just, I've never seen somebody's reputation so damaged after one album. Like, really, like, obviously, people have dropped bad albums and it's affected their career before, but I've never seen a guy go from somebody who, like, universally was seen as, like, the next big thing. He's doing all this while independent. Oh my gosh, Chance the Rapper, to being considered complete garbage in the span of one album. I've never seen that before. He went from, in these conversations, mainstream rap, one of the guys that you talk about when you talk about the best rappers in the game, one of the biggest rappers in the game, to just another guy. Not even. He was a complete afterthought after one album. Please sit down, dude. He was a complete afterthought after one album, and I just couldn't believe that. Like, that was insane to me. And, obviously he wasn't super active in the time being after a big day. He wasn't dropping a ton of music, so it kind of just went hand in hand. And, he had some real life stuff going on. He was married. I think he had a kid, I believe. I'm not sure. But he had some real life stuff going on, and then eventually, the divorce and all that stuff. But, like, it just felt like we weren't going to get Chance the Rapper ever again. He might drop music. He might drop some good songs every now and then, but we're never going to get Chance again. And when he dropped this album, I felt the soul. And that's one of the things that really is prominent throughout Chance's best music is that soul. Like, you just feel it in your chest. You know what I mean? That type of thing. And that's on this album. Especially when he gets the church-like choir singing and stuff. It's just, you feel it. You really, really feel it. And that feeling has returned. That feeling has returned on this album. He's doing the gospel rap thing, rapping about the Lord, and he's also rapping about, Chance is kind of a conscious rapper, so, he raps about a lot of the stuff affecting the black community, a lot of the things that, are massive negatives, a lot of the things that should be positive but aren't positive, like the black church, a lot of stuff, like a lot of great stuff is in this album, and I can't wait to probably do a full breakdown on it when I really want to, like, sink my teeth into it, but it's just nice to have him back making great music. That's really my takeaway from this album. Regardless of any rating you want to give it, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever you want to rate it out of 10, I don't care. It's just nice to have what feels like the Chance the Rapper that I fell in love with as a kid back musically. Because I'm enjoying this album a lot. Dude, can you just sit down? My dog he's killing me. I'm just enjoying this album a lot. And it reminds me of being a kid. Like Taylor said, I can't be a kid. I pick Clark. But regardless, yeah, I think that's it. I think I'm gonna wrap this up. I'm gonna go to bed. I need to get some sleep. It's super late, and I just wanted to get this out of here because I wanted to talk about a few things. I wanted to let you guys know how I felt about some things. Talk about some music. Here's the dog, by the way, that's been giving me all the trouble. You want to say something? I think he wants me to go to bed. Turn all these lights off. But yeah, if you made it to the end of this episode, I greatly, greatly appreciate you. The Paycheck is one of the podcasts on YouTube. Make sure you leave a like, comment, subscribe, do all those things. It helps me out a ton. I go by the name of Pay. Peace.